At the neighborhood garage sale, my daughter-in-law labeled my engagement necklace, "Old piece $10." When I revealed the story behind the necklace, she begged for forgiveness on her knees. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached." I never thought a small white sticker could shatter my heart. $10, old piece. Those 4 words, scribbled in my daughter-in-law's handwriting, were attached to my engagement necklace, the one my George had placed around my neck 40 years ago. It was a crisp Saturday morning, and I had decided to walk through the neighborhood garage sale that Olivia had organized in our front yard. At 65, I still enjoyed these community events, the familiar faces of neighbors browsing through items while sharing stories and laughter. I hadn't planned on helping with the sale. Olivia had made it clear that she didn't need my assistance when she announced her plans at dinner last week. "I've got everything under control, Martha," she had said with that dismissive wave of her hand. "You'd just slow things down." So I kept my distance, watching from the porch as she arranged tables and priced items from around the house. Items I hadn't even realized she'd collected for selling. I was sipping my morning tea when I noticed Mrs. Peterson, who lived 3 doors down, examining something that caught the sunlight. My heart stopped. Even from a distance, I recognized the delicate gold chain and the distinctive sapphire pendant that had been in my family for over 120 years. My legs carried me forward before my mind could fully process what was happening. There it was, my most treasured possession, sitting in a cardboard box labeled "Jewelry and Accessories," with that insulting white sticker declaring its worth as less than a movie ticket. Mrs. Peterson turned the necklace in her hands, the morning light dancing across the gemstone. "This seems quite lovely for just $10, she said to Olivia. Olivia's laugh cut through me like ice. "Oh, it's just some old costume jewelry of Martha's. Probably not even real. We're clearing out all her old junk to make room for things." "We actually use junk?" The necklace that had been worn by my grandmother at her wedding in 1903? The same necklace my mother had cherished through 2 world wars? The necklace George had saved for 3 years to have restored before placing it around my neck on the night he proposed? Mrs. Peterson noticed me standing there, my face drained of color. "Martha, is this yours? It's quite beautiful." I couldn't speak. I just reached out and gently took the necklace from her hands. The familiar weight of it settled in my palm, and I closed my fingers around it, feeling the smooth stone and delicate metalwork. Olivia's expression shifted from surprise to irritation. "Martha, we talked about getting rid of old things. You have so many trinkets collecting dust. We never talked about this," I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "You never asked me about this." My son David wasn't home. He was away on another business trip, leaving Olivia to help organize the house, as he put it. I had never imagined her idea of organizing included selling my most precious possessions. "What's the big deal?" Olivia rolled her eyes. "It's just an old necklace." Something broke inside me at that moment. After 3 years of biting my tongue, of watching Olivia gradually take over my home since she and David moved in after George's death, of retreating further into myself to keep the peace, I finally found my voice. "This necklace," I began, feeling strength rising in my chest, "belonged to my grandmother, who wore it when she married my grandfather in 1903. During the Depression, when they lost everything, she refused to sell this, even when they couldn't afford to eat. My mother wore it on her wedding day, and then on the day I was born." I took a breath, aware that several neighbors had stopped to listen. "George spent 3 years saving money to have it professionally restored before he proposed to me. He placed it around my neck the night he asked me to be his wife." I touched the sapphire, feeling its familiar coolness against my fingertips. "I wore it when David was born. I was planning to give it to him to pass on to his own daughter someday." My eyes met Olivia's, and for a brief moment, I saw a flicker of shame cross her face. But it quickly disappeared, replaced by a hardened expression I had come to know all too well. "How was I supposed to know all that?" she snapped. "You never tell us anything about your old things." Mrs. Peterson placed a gentle hand on my arm. "Martha, I had no idea it was so special." I nodded, still clutching the necklace. Neither did Olivia, apparently, because she never bothered to ask. I turned and walked back into the house, the weight of the necklace in my hand the only thing keeping me grounded. Behind me, I could hear Olivia making excuses, laughing it off to the neighbors. "Mother-in-laws and their sentimentality," she said loudly. "Who can keep track of what means what to them?" As I closed the door behind me, I realized something important. I wasn't just losing my possessions. I was losing my voice in my own home. And for the first time since George died, I wondered if allowing David and Olivia to move in had been my greatest mistake. I sat on the edge of my bed, the necklace resting in my palm. My bedroom had become my sanctuary in recent years, the one place Olivia hadn't completely taken over. She'd suggested updating it several times, but I'd held firm. This was still mine. The sapphire caught the afternoon light streaming through the window. I remembered the first time I'd seen it sparkle this way, in George's trembling hands as he knelt before me in the garden of my parents' home. How nervous he had been. This strong man who could build anything, suddenly fumbling with the clasp. "It belonged to your grandmother," he had said. "Your mother thought you should have it now. I had it restored." I traced the delicate gold filigree surrounding the stone. The craftsmanship was exquisite, something no $10 garage sale sticker could ever reflect. A knock on the door pulled me from my memories. "Mom?" David's voice. He must have come home early. "Come in," I said, quickly wiping away tears I hadn't realized were falling. My son's tall frame filled the doorway. At 42, he looked so much like his father, the same broad shoulders, the same kind eyes. But lately, I'd noticed a hesitation in him when he spoke to me, as if he was constantly mediating between his wife and his mother. "Olivia told me what happened," he began, sitting beside me on the bed. "She feels terrible." I doubted that very much, but I kept the thought to myself. "She didn't know the necklace was important," he continued. "You have so many things, Mom. How was she supposed to know?" "She could have asked me," I said quietly. "That's typically what people do before they sell someone else's possessions." David sighed, running a hand through his hair, just like George used to do when he was troubled. "Mom, you know Olivia is just trying to help. This house has so much stuff. Since Dad died, you haven't been very good at letting things go." I closed my fingers around the necklace. "There's a difference between stuff and treasured family heirlooms, David." I know. He patted my hand. "But honestly, Mom, sometimes it's hard to tell which is which. You keep everything." Did I? I looked around my bedroom. Yes, there were photographs on every surface, books that George and I had read together, the quilt my mother had made for my wedding. But these weren't just things. They were anchors to a life I'd loved, touchstones to people now gone. "Your father understood the difference," I said softly. A flash of something, guilt perhaps, crossed David's face. He stood up abruptly. "Olivia really is sorry. She's making your favorite dinner tonight as an apology." Pot roast wouldn't fix this, but I nodded anyway. What good would it do to argue? After David left, I walked to my closet and pulled out the old cedar chest where I kept my most precious items. I wanted to be sure everything was still there. The letters George had written me during our courtship, my parents' wedding album, the silver baby rattle that had been David's. As I sorted through the contents, a cold realization washed over me. Several items were missing. My mother's cameo brooch, the pearl earrings George had given me for our 25th anniversary, and the small music box that played Claire de Lune that had sat on my bedside table for decades. I hadn't noticed them gone, because I didn't wear jewelry often since George's passing. But now, looking at the empty spaces in my jewelry box, dread pooled in my stomach. Had these pieces also ended up in Olivia's garage sale? Or had they disappeared earlier, sold without my knowledge? When I came downstairs for dinner that evening, Olivia was all smiles and saccharine sweetness. "Martha, I feel just awful about today," she said, placing the pot roast on the table with flourish. "I had no idea that old necklace meant so much to you." I noticed she still couldn't bring herself to acknowledge its actual value. It was still just an old necklace to her. "There are many things in this house that mean something to me, Olivia," I said, taking my seat. "Things that have been disappearing lately." David shot me a warning look. "Mom, let's not ruin dinner," Olivia apologized. "Actually," I continued, ignoring him, "I've noticed several pieces of my jewelry are missing. My mother's cameo brooch, for instance. And the pearl earrings your father gave me for our anniversary." Olivia's smile faltered. "I haven't seen those. Perhaps you misplaced them?" "I've kept them in the same jewelry box for 40 years. David cleared his throat. "Mom, you've been forgetful lately. Remember when you couldn't find your reading glasses and they were on top of your head? That wasn't the same thing at all, and he knew it. But the implication was clear. If items were missing, the problem was my memory, not Olivia's actions." "I'm not imagining this, David." An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. David served the pot roast while Olivia poured the wine with hands that trembled slightly. I noticed her exchange a quick glance with my son, a look I couldn't quite decipher. Later that night, as I prepared for bed, I heard them arguing in hushed tones down the hall. I couldn't make out the words, but the tension in their voices was unmistakable. I placed the necklace carefully in my bedside drawer, tucking it beneath my Bible where I hoped it would be safe. As I did, I remembered something George had told me just before he died. "Don't let anyone make you small in your own home, Martha. This is your castle, your legacy." I had let myself become small, retreating to my bedroom, giving up my voice, watching as Olivia gradually took control of the house and David became increasingly distant. For 3 years I'd told myself it was better this way, that having family around was worth the compromises. But as I lay in bed that night, I wondered, at what point does compromise become surrender? And what else would I lose before I found the courage to stand up for myself? The doorbell rang just as I was finishing my morning tea. 3 days had passed since the garage sale incident, and an uneasy truce had settled over the house. Olivia was overly polite, David was rarely home, and I had taken to keeping my bedroom door locked when I wasn't in it. I opened the front door to find Evelyn Baker, my neighbor from across the street, standing there with a small wrapped package. "Martha, I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "I wanted to return this to you." She handed me the package. "I bought it at your garage sale, but when I heard what happened with your necklace, I realized you might not have known about this either." My hands trembled slightly as I unwrapped the tissue paper. Inside was my mother's silver and turquoise brooch, the one she'd worn every Sunday to church for 40 years. "Evelyn," I whispered. "Thank you. I had no idea this was gone." "I paid $20 for it," she said. "But I don't want your money back. I just thought you should have it." I invited her in for coffee, my mind racing. How many other treasures had Olivia sold without my knowledge? The young lady, your daughter-in-law, said you were downsizing. Evelyn explained as we sat at the kitchen table. "She mentioned you were moving to a retirement community soon." The cup nearly slipped from my hand. "She said what?" Evelyn looked uncomfortable. "That you were selling things because you'd be moving to a smaller place. Willowbrook Retirement Village, I think she said." I'd never heard of Willowbrook, and I certainly had no plans to move anywhere. George and I had built this house together 40 years ago, chosen every fixture, planted every tree in the yard. I'd always planned to stay here until I couldn't anymore. After Evelyn left, I sat in George's old armchair in the living room, the brooch clutched in my hand, trying to make sense of everything. Why would Olivia tell people I was moving? What else had she been saying or selling behind my back? I waited until I heard Olivia leave for her yoga class before I began my search. I started in the attic, where most of our family heirlooms were stored. As I suspected, several boxes were missing, the ones containing George's collection of vintage watches, my grandmother's hand-painted china, and the silver serving pieces we'd received as wedding gifts. Next, I checked the garage, looking through the boxes left over from the sale. Most contained genuinely unimportant items: old magazines, outdated kitchen gadgets, clothes that no longer fit. But in a small box near the back wall, I found something that made my blood run cold. It was a printed list titled Martha's Items, for sale, in Olivia's handwriting. The list included things that had already been sold at the garage sale, with prices and the names of buyers. But more disturbing was the second page labeled for online auction, which included my diamond tennis bracelet, listed as vintage costume jewelry, George's grandfather's pocket watch, antique timepiece, minor repairs needed, and several other valuable family pieces. I took the list to my bedroom and closed the door, my heart pounding. This wasn't just thoughtlessness, it was deliberate. Olivia was systematically selling off my possessions while telling the neighborhood I was moving to a retirement home. I was still sitting there, trying to decide what to do, when I heard David's car pull into the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be home until evening. I tucked the list into my sweater pocket and went downstairs. He was in the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water, his face drawn and tired. "You're home early," I said. "Meeting got canceled." He leaned against the counter, not quite meeting, my eyes. "Mom, we need to talk." Something in his tone made me wary. "About what?" He sighed. "Olivia thinks, we both think, it might be time to consider some changes." "What kind of changes?" But I already knew. "You're getting older, Mom. This house is too big for you to manage alone. And honestly, having 3 adults under one roof isn't working as well as we'd hoped." "I see," I said carefully. "And who would stay in the house? You and Olivia?" He had the grace to look embarrassed. "It would make sense. We're starting a family and—" "You're what?" This was the first I'd heard of a grandchild. David's cheeks reddened. "Olivia's not pregnant yet, but we're trying. And when it happens, we'll need the space. So I should leave my home, the home your father and I built, because you might have a baby someday?" "Don't put it like that," he said, frustrated. "We're trying to think about what's best for everyone. Willowbrook is a really nice place." There it was, Willowbrook, the place Olivia had already been telling neighbors I was moving to. "I'm not going anywhere, David." I pulled the list from my pocket and set it on the counter. "And I think you need to see this." His eyes scanned the paper, confusion turning to disbelief. "What is this?" "A list of my possessions that your wife has been selling without my knowledge. Some at the garage sale, others planned for online auctions." "That can't be right," he started, but I could see doubt creeping into his expression. "Evelyn Baker returned my mother's brooch to me today. Olivia sold it to her for $20. She also told Evelyn I was moving to Willowbrook soon." David shook his head. "There must be some misunderstanding." "Is it a misunderstanding that my diamond bracelet is missing? Or your great-grandfather's pocket watch? Are those things I simply misplaced, like you suggested about my pearl earrings?" He ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father's that it made my heart ache. "I'll talk to Olivia." "You do that," I said, taking back the list. "And while you're at it, ask her why she's been telling people I'm moving when no one ever discussed this with me." After David left the room, I returned to my bedroom, emotionally exhausted. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened the drawer where I'd hidden my necklace beneath the Bible. It was gone. Panic surged through me as I emptied the drawer, searching frantically through every item. But there was no denying it. The necklace had vanished. Again. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Margaret, my oldest friend. It was a link to an online auction site with a message. "Martha, isn't this yours?" Spotted it while looking for vintage jewelry. I clicked the link, and there it was, my engagement necklace, photographed on a white background, described as antique sapphire and diamond pendant, circa 1900. The listing had been posted by a seller called Olivia's Treasures. I stared at my phone screen until it went dark, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Olivia's Treasures. There was no mistaking who had taken my necklace from my drawer and listed it for sale. Before I could even process what I was seeing, I heard the front door open, followed by Olivia's voice chatting animatedly on the phone. She was home from yoga class. Something in me snapped. All the hurt, all the betrayal, all the quiet compromises I'd made over the past 3 years crystallized into a single burning conviction. Enough was enough. I marched downstairs, still clutching my phone. Olivia was in the kitchen, setting down her yoga mat and water bottle. She looked up, her practiced smile faltering when she saw my expression. "Martha, is everything okay?" I held up my phone, showing her the auction listing. "You tell me." Her face went through a series of expressions: surprise, guilt, and finally, defiance. She ended her call abruptly. "You went through my things?" she asked, trying to turn the tables. "No, Olivia. You went through mine. You took my necklace from my bedroom drawer and listed it for sale online." She crossed her arms. "You don't use it. It was just sitting there collecting dust." "It was in my drawer, under my Bible," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You had to search for it." "David and I were discussing downsizing your things," she said, as if this explained everything. "You have so much stuff, Martha. It's not healthy." "So you decided to steal my possessions and sell them? After I explicitly told you how important that necklace is to me?" She sighed dramatically. "You're overreacting. It's just old jewelry. It's my history. My family's history." I took a step closer to her. "And you have no right to take it from me." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "This house is too full of the past. Too full of George. David can't even breathe in here sometimes because everything reminds him of his father." "Did David tell you that?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "He doesn't have to. I see how he looks at all these relics. They're holding everyone back." "They're not holding anyone back. They're reminders of love, of family." She laughed, a cold sound that echoed in the kitchen. "Family? Is that what you call it? Do you know what it's like living in the shadow of St. George and Perfect Martha? The couple who had the ideal marriage, the perfect love story." I was stunned into silence. Was that how she saw us? "David feels like he can never measure up," she continued, her voice rising. "His father was such a wonderful man, such a devoted husband. And you're the grieving widow who sacrificed everything for her family." "I never claimed to be perfect," I said quietly. "You don't have to. It's in every picture on the wall, every story you tell, every treasure you cling to." The front door opened and David walked in. He stopped short when he saw us standing there, tension crackling in the air. "What's going on?" he asked, looking from me to Olivia. I handed him my phone. "Your wife stole my necklace from my bedroom and listed it for sale online." David's face paled as he stared at the screen. "Olivia? Is this true?" For a moment, she seemed caught off guard by his presence. Then her expression changed, her eyes filling with tears. "I was just trying to help," she said, her voice breaking. Martha has so many things, and we need to prepare for the baby. I thought if we could sell some of the items she doesn't use, it would make the transition easier. What transition? I asked sharply. David looked uncomfortable. We were going to talk about it more tonight, Mom. About the possibility of you moving to Willowbrook. You mean the place Olivia has already been telling neighbors I'm moving to? The place she's been using as an excuse to sell my possessions? It's not like that, David started, but I cut him off. I found her list, David. A detailed inventory of my things she's already sold and what she plans to sell next. I watched my son's face as he struggled to reconcile his wife's actions with the excuses he'd been making for her. For the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. Olivia, he said slowly. Did you take the necklace from Mom's room? She hesitated, then straightened her shoulders. Yes, I did. But not for the reasons she's implying. I just thought it was time to let go of some of these old things. It wasn't yours to decide, I said. I'm your daughter-in-law. I live in this house too. I should have some say in what happens here. Not when it comes to my personal possessions, I said firmly. Not when it comes to deciding where I live. David rubbed his forehead. Mom, no one is trying to force you out. We were just going to discuss options. While Olivia was already selling my things and telling the neighborhood I was moving, I shook my head. That doesn't sound like a discussion to me. It sounds like a decision you two already made. Olivia stepped closer to David, placing her hand on his arm. I was trying to help organize things. Your mother keeps everything, David. The house is cluttered with the past. My memories are not clutter, I said, my voice breaking slightly. And this is still my home. David looked torn, caught between his wife and his mother. The old Martha might have backed down then, might have tried to smooth things over to keep the peace, but I wasn't that woman anymore. I want my necklace back, I said. And everything else Olivia has taken. Of course, David said quickly. Olivia will cancel the listing right away. Olivia's eyes flashed with anger. So you're taking her side? There shouldn't be sides, he said, visibly frustrated. This is Mom's house, and those are her things. And what about our future? Our baby? We need more space, not less. David's expression changed. There is no baby yet, Olivia. And even if there was, that doesn't give us the right to push Mom out of her own home or sell her possessions, Olivia stared at him, her face flushing. I see. She turned to me, her voice cold. You've always had him wrapped around your finger, haven't you, Martha? Poor, sweet, widowed Martha, all alone in this big house with her precious memories. That's enough, David said sharply. But Olivia wasn't finished. You think I don't see? Through you? You've been manipulating David since the day we got married, making him feel guilty for not being here more often, using his father's memory to control him. Olivia, stop, David warned. Why should I? She needs to hear this. She needs to understand that she can't keep living in the past. George is gone. Martha, and all these things you're hoarding won't bring him back. The kitchen fell silent. I felt as if I'd been slapped, but beneath the sting of her words, a strange calm settled over me. I finally understood what this was really about. You're right, Olivia, I said quietly. These things won't bring George back. But they remind me of a life well lived, of love that doesn't disappear just because someone dies. I looked at David, whose face reflected shock at his wife's outburst. I'm not leaving my home, and I expect everything that's been taken to be returned immediately. Then I turned back to Olivia, meeting her gaze steadily. If you can't respect that, then perhaps you should be the one to consider other living arrangements. The days following our confrontation in the kitchen were filled with a tense silence. Olivia barely spoke to me, moving through the house like a sullen ghost. David seemed perpetually caught in the middle, his loyalties visibly torn between his wife and his mother. I didn't waver in my resolve. The necklace had been returned, Olivia had canceled the online listing and placed it on my dresser without a word, but the damage had been done. Trust, once broken, isn't easily repaired. On a rainy Tuesday morning, I sat at the kitchen table with my untouched coffee, watching droplets race down the window pane. David entered, looking tired and rumpled, as if he hadn't slept well. "Morning, Mom," he said, pouring himself coffee before sitting across from me. "Got a minute to talk?" I nodded, steeling myself for whatever was coming. "I've been doing some thinking," he began, staring into his mug. "About everything that's happened. About what's best for everyone." "And what have you decided is best for everyone?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He looked up, his eyes, so like his father's, filled with a mixture of resolve and regret. "Olivia and I are going to move out." This wasn't what I'd expected. "David, no, Mom, please let me finish. It's the right thing to do. This is your home. Dad built it for you. I was wrong to ever think you should leave it." Relief washed over me, followed quickly by concern for my son. "What about you and Olivia? What does she say about this?" A shadow crossed his face. "She's not happy. But I finally made her understand that we can't push you out of your own home. And honestly," he hesitated, "I think we need some space of our own too." The unspoken truth hung between us. His marriage was struggling under the weight of Olivia's actions and his divided loyalty. "I found an apartment across town," he continued. "It's nothing fancy, but it'll do until we figure things out." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "I never wanted to come between you and Olivia." "You didn't," he said firmly. "Olivia's choices did that. I just didn't want to see it at first." We talked for nearly an hour, really talked, in a way we hadn't since before George died. David admitted he'd been blind to Olivia's behavior, making excuses because it was easier than confronting the truth. He apologized for not standing up for me sooner, for allowing me to be pushed to the margins of my own home. "Dad would be ashamed of me," he said at one point, his voice breaking. "No," I said gently. "Your father understood that love sometimes clouds our judgment. He would just want you to do what's right now." Later that afternoon, as I was tending to the roses George and I had planted years ago, Olivia approached me in the garden. She stood awkwardly, arms crossed, her usually perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "David says we're moving out by the end of the week," she said without preamble. I straightened up, brushing soil from my gardening gloves. "Yes, he told me this morning." "You must be happy," she said bitterly. "You won." "This isn't about winning or losing, Olivia, isn't it? You get to keep your precious house and all your precious memories, and I'm the villain who tried to take it all away." I sighed, suddenly tired of the antagonism. "I never saw you as a villain. I just wanted respect in my own home." "Respect?" she scoffed. "What about respect for the living? For the future? This whole house is a shrine to the past, to George." There it was again. The resentment of a man she'd never even met. George had died a year before she and David married. "George was my husband for 40 years, I said quietly. "He's part of who I am. I won't apologize for keeping his memory alive." "And what about David? Doesn't he deserve a wife who isn't constantly compared to some idealized memory of his parents' perfect marriage?" I studied her face, seeing beyond the anger to the insecurity beneath. "Is that what you think happens? That I compare you to my marriage with George?" She looked away. "Everyone does. Martha and George were so in love. Martha and George never argued. Martha and George built this house with their own hands. How am I supposed to compete with a ghost?" For the first time, I felt a flicker of sympathy for my daughter-in-law. "Marriage isn't a competition, Olivia. And for what it's worth, George and I argued plenty. We struggled, we compromised. Not according to the stories David tells. According to him, you two were perfect." I smiled sadly. "Memory is kind that way. It softens the rough edges. Olivia was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Did you ever think about moving on? After George died?" The question caught me off guard. Moving on? Dating. Finding someone new. I shook my head. I had 40 wonderful years with the love of my life. I'm content with my memories. See, that's what I don't understand, she said, frustration edging her voice. How can memories be enough? They're not real. They're just echoes. They're real to me, I said simply. They're part of what makes me who I am today. She stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to understand something fundamentally foreign to her. Then she shrugged. Well, you'll have your house to yourself again soon. You can fill it with as many memories as you want. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Olivia. She paused. I hope you and David find happiness in your new place. And I hope someday you'll understand that there's room in life for both the past and the future. She didn't respond, just continued walking toward the house. The next few days passed in a flurry of boxes and packing tape. I stayed out of the way as David and Olivia prepared for their move, offering help only when asked. Most of the furniture was mine, so they were primarily packing personal belongings and kitchen items they'd accumulated during their time here. On their last evening in the house, David knocked on my bedroom door. When I opened it, he was holding a small box. I found these in Olivia's closet, he said, handing it to me. I think they belong to you. Inside were my missing pearl earrings, my mother's cameo brooch that Evelyn had returned, and several other pieces of jewelry I'd thought were lost forever. Thank you, I said, touched by his honesty. He shifted uncomfortably. There's something else. From his pocket, he pulled out a piece of paper and handed it to me. It was a receipt from a pawn shop, dated 3 months earlier, listing several items including gold pocket watch and diamond tennis bracelet. I'm so sorry, Mom, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I didn't know. I'll try to get them back, I promise. I folded the receipt and handed it back to him. Some things can't be recovered, David, but I appreciate you telling me the truth. He nodded, blinking back tears. I've been such a fool. We all make mistakes, I said gently. What matters is how we make them right. Later that night, as I lay in bed listening to the quiet sounds of an emptying house, my thoughts turned to George. What would he think of all this? Of the woman I'd become in his absence? Of the stand I'd finally taken? I could almost hear his voice. It's about time, Martha. It's about time. The Price of Memories. Chapter 6. The reconstruction, 1 year can change everything. It's been exactly 12 months since David and Olivia moved out of my house. 12 months of reclaiming spaces and rebuilding boundaries. 12 months of rediscovering. The woman I was before grief made me small. The house feels different now, lighter somehow, as if it too has shed a burden. I've redecorated some rooms, keeping the best of the past while making room for new possibilities. George's armchair still sits in the corner of the living room, but now it's paired with a bright blue throw pillow I bought on a day trip to the coast with my sister. The walls have fresh paint, but the photographs remain. Tangible reminders of a life well lived. This morning, I'm preparing for a special occasion. The dining room table is set with my grandmother's china, the pieces Olivia didn't manage to sell. Polished silverware gleams in the sunlight streaming through windows I washed yesterday, and a vase of fresh-cut roses from my garden serves as a centerpiece. Today, David is coming for lunch, and he's bringing someone I haven't seen in months, Olivia. Their separation wasn't easy. For a while, David called every day, his voice strained as he navigated life apart from his wife. They tried counseling, took a break, and somehow found their way back to each other. Olivia got a job at an art gallery, started therapy, and according to David, has been working hard to understand why she felt so threatened by memories and sentimental objects. I'm not naive enough to believe people change completely, but I've lived long enough to know that growth is possible when we're willing to face our failures. The doorbell rings precisely at noon. I smooth my dress, a new one I bought specifically for today, and open the door. David stands there, looking more at peace than I've seen him in years. Beside him is Olivia, holding a small wrapped package, her expression a mixture of nervousness and determination. "Mom," David says, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "You look wonderful." "Thank you both for coming," I say, stepping back to let them enter. The initial moments are awkward, filled with careful politeness and cautious smiles. We make small talk about the weather, David's work, the renovations I've made to the house. Gradually, the tension eases as we settle into the dining room and share the meal I've prepared. Over dessert, George's favorite apple pie made from his mother's recipe, Olivia clears her throat. "Martha," she begins, her voice steadier than I expected. "I owe you an apology, a real one this time." David reaches for her hand, a gesture of support. "What I did, selling your things, trying to push you out of your home, it was wrong, inexcusable." She takes a deep breath. "I've spent a lot of time in therapy trying to understand why I did it." I set down my fork, giving her my full attention. "I was jealous," she admits. "Of your marriage, of your history, of the place you held in David's heart. I felt like I was competing with ghosts I could never beat. I never intended to make you feel that way," I say softly. "I know that now, but back then I couldn't see past my own insecurities." She glances at David. "I almost lost everything that mattered because I couldn't accept that the past is part of who we are." David squeezes her hand. "We've both learned a lot this year." Olivia reaches for the package she brought and slides it across the table to me. "This isn't a way to buy forgiveness. I know it doesn't work that way. But I wanted you to have this." Unwrap it carefully, unsure what to expect. Inside is a small wooden shadow box. Behind the glass lies George's pocket watch, the one I thought was lost forever when Olivia pawned it. "David found the pawn shop receipt," she explains. "But when we went back, they'd already sold it. I spent months tracking it down through online forums and collector groups." My fingers trace the glass covering the watch face. It had belonged to George's grandfather, passed down through generations. The fact that she went to such lengths to recover it speaks volumes. "Thank you," I say, emotion making my voice thick. "This means a great deal to me." "There's something else," David says, reaching into his jacket pocket. He hands me a small velvet box. Inside is my sapphire engagement necklace, but it's been altered. Now, attached to the chain near the clasp, is a delicate gold charm shaped like a rose. "We wanted to add something new to symbolize a fresh start," David explains. "The rose is for your garden, for the new life you've been nurturing this past year." Tears prick at my eyes as I lift the necklace. "It's beautiful. I hope it's okay that we modified it," Olivia says, uncertainty in her voice. "I know how important the original piece is to you." "It's more than okay," I assure her. "It's perfect." And it is. The necklace now represents not just my past with George, but my journey forward, a journey that has made me stronger, more confident in my own voice. After lunch, we move to the living room for coffee. The conversation flows more easily now, the worst of the tension broken. Olivia asks about my local history class, a new venture I started 6 months ago at the community center, sharing stories of our town's past with eager students. "I'd like to come sometime," she says, and I believe she means it. As they prepare to leave a few hours later, I walk them to the door. On the porch, Olivia hesitates, then asks, "Would it be all right if we came for dinner next Sunday? There's something we'd like to discuss with you." David smiles. "It's good news, Mom. Really good news." I think I know what they want to tell me, have noticed the subtle changes in Olivia's appearance and the protective way David has been watching her all afternoon. I'd like that very much, I say. After they drive away, I return to the living room and sit in George's chair, the necklace still in my hands. I fasten it around my neck, feeling the weight of the pendant rest against my collarbone, familiar yet different with the addition of the rose charm. On the wall across from me hangs a new addition to the room, a shadow box display I created myself. Inside is the $10 price tag Olivia once placed on my necklace. Next to it is a handwritten card that reads, "Some things have no price. Their value lies in the stories they tell and the memories they hold." It serves as a reminder of how far we've all come. Later that evening, as twilight softens the edges of the garden George and I planted together, I sit on the porch swing with a cup of tea. A young couple has just moved in across the street, and the woman waves when she sees me looking. I wave back, thinking I should take them some of my rosemary bread as a welcome gift tomorrow. My fingers touch the sapphire pendant at my throat, then move to the small gold rose beside it. The past and the present, side by side. Not competing, but complementing each other. This is what I've learned over the past year. Memories are not meant to be locked away like museum pieces, nor should they be discarded as irrelevant. They are meant to be touchstones, guiding us forward while honoring where we've been. A light breeze rustles the roses, carrying their sweet scent across the yard. Somewhere in that gentle wind, I feel George's presence, not as a ghost I'm clinging to, but as part of the foundation that makes me who I am. "I'm doing well, my love," I whisper to the evening air. Better than I ever imagined. And for the first time in years, I truly believe it.